Hey, what's up, everybody? You guys made it just in the nick of crime, and we have lots of stuff to talk about tonight. I did a midday recap yesterday, but did not do the end of day one because by the time, basically, long and short, for those of you who have been following along, you know that I am on vacation with my family, so I'll try to get these updates done for you guys when we get back from the day we're at Disney. But the park was open late for people who were staying on property. We're staying at a resort on Disney property, so we were at Magic Kingdom until they closed. And by the time we got home, got back, unloaded, etc., it was like 1:30 in the morning, and I just did not have it in me to put a show together for you guys. So I'm going to give you the end of day what happened yesterday after the midday recap. If you missed the midday recap from yesterday, it is still on YouTube. You can go, there's a Diddy playlist. You can go there and watch any of these, including this one if you can't stay for the whole thing. But we had a lot happened, especially today. There's a few other things I want to go over before we get into the trial stuff. Jamie Foxx made a comment today about his situation or his whatever with Diddy. And then something else that's happening that Diddy's team is working on doing with President Trump. So I'll explain that in a second for you guys. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about the end of day yesterday and the beginning of today, or all day today, in the recap for the Diddy trial. And then real quick, that's it for the week. The jury, when court adjourned for the day, they are off for the holiday. There is no court tomorrow, but when they come back on Monday, and I will tell you at the end of this who's coming on as their next witness, there is a really good witness that is coming on at the beginning of next week when court resumes back on Tuesday, at which point I should be back home and being able to do these better for you guys again. And that being said, real quick, for my people on TikTok, do me a solid, tap that screen. Let's get that to 10,000 as quickly as we can. At the same time, TikTok friends, there are going to be a lot. This is going to be a photo heavy episode. So if you want to see the pictures that are in this one, you might want to head over to YouTube and see that there. For my Insta friends, you guys can stay right where you are because you're seeing the same thing that is on YouTube. And by the way, for anybody, whichever one of these that you're on, please make sure to hit that follow button, that subscribe button, whatever you do to make sure that you get these updates. There's a free thing that you can do to help support this content is by hitting the follow button. It's easy to do. We put a lot of work into this, and obviously I appreciate each and every one of my followers. Unless you are on the side of Diddy, then F off. I don't want you as a follower. But in all seriousness, though, I do appreciate it. So, all right, so let's just kind of jump in first. A couple things real quick before we get into the court updates from yesterday and today. And that's the first one we're going to talk about is Jamie Foxx. So if you guys might remember, there was rumors a while back that Jamie Foxx believed that he was a victim of Diddy. That's why he ended up in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And he apparently came out setting the record straight. And he did it. It was kind of funny what he did too. But basically, while all of this stuff is playing out in New York, Diddy's name is out there. Jamie's name has come up more. He is shutting down one of the rumors that has been floating around since then, which is that Diddy tried to take his life. Basically, he did a recent comedy roundtable with the Hollywood Reporter. Jamie opened up about his 2023 hospitalization from a brain bleed and stroke. He said while he was recovering, he snuck a phone into the hospital and started seeing some pretty what he thought was pretty crazy headlines, like people actually saying, quote, Puff tried to kill Jamie Foxx. He laughed it off, but he didn't stop there. He joked that people thought he was a clone and said from his hospital bed that he imagined seeing a white version of him walking into the room. He said, I know what's up. You're trying to clone me and make me white so I sell better overseas, which is kind of funny. He said that a psychiatrist even overheard him talking about this and was like, we need to lower your medication dosage. But real quick, I don't know, why is it like so many of y'all like are obsessed with clones? Like everybody's got to be a clone. Like Diddy's not in jail. It's a clone. This is not Epstein. It was a clone. Jamie Foxx, it's a clone. You guys like love clones. Like that is like a really popular conspiracy theory is clones. Like really popular. Nobody's a clone. Nobody's a clone. Clones do not exist. Not yet anyway. Anyways, moving on. Now, I have not seen his Netflix special, what happened was, but if you have seen it, then you probably know that Jamie used his return to comedy to roast the whole situation. He said he saw a tunnel during his stroke, but not the light. He joked that maybe it wasn't the devil at the end of it. Maybe it was Puffy with a flaming bottle of baby oil. He finished it off with a line only Jamie Foxx could deliver, which is, I left those parties early. I was out by 9. Something didn't look right. It looked slippery in there. So Is there any truth to the rumors? Jamie says absolutely not. And back in 2024, a source close to Diddy also told reporters that there was zero truth to the idea that Diddy had anything to do with Jamie's health scare. So while Diddy is fighting for his freedom in federal court, his team is apparently already working. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself on this one. So anyways, that's what's going on with Jamie Foxx. Now let's talk about this one right here. Again, if you're not on TikTok, if you're on TikTok, you can't see the photos, but everyone else can. So while Diddy is fighting for his freedom in federal court, his team is apparently already working behind the scenes on a possible Trump pardon. According to Rolling Stone magazine, allies of Diddy have been quietly reaching out to people in the Trump orbit ever since he won re-election back last November. And what the goal? Well, to lay the groundwork for a potential clemency plea in the likely event Diddy is convicted of trafficking and racketeering. Now, here's where it gets a little bit wild, because sources told Rolling Stone that Diddy's people are willing to do anything to get him out of jail, even though Diddy reportedly doesn't even like Trump. But that's not stopping his camp from cozying up to the MAGA insiders and basically trying to make the case that Combs, like Trump, is just a rich, powerful man being targeted by the so-called deep state. They're pitching the charges as an attack on his private life, not his business dealings, and they've even reminded Trump's people that he's publicly called Diddy a friend before. There's an old Celebrity Apprentice clip where Trump says, "I love Diddy. He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy." But here's the thing. So far, there is zero sign that President Trump is even aware of these conversations. And even some of his own officials say a pardon would be a huge PR disaster given how serious these charges are. You know, we're talking about trafficking and racketeering and alleged abuse of women as recently as 2024. So still, Diddy's team seems to be banking on Trump's habit of rewarding loyalty or flattery, basically going off the fact that Trump did pardon Lil Wayne and others in his last term just because they supported him. Although this is a little bit different of a charge than what those were. So could it happen again? Well, you know, it's hard to say. But if this case does go sideways for Diddy, don't be surprised if his name ends up in a clemency request on President Trump's desk. So we'll see if it happens or not. But that's what his team is working on, y'all. That is what his team is working on. So now, yesterday, this is talking about Wednesday, the Wednesday evening recap. I've really summarized it to keep it short so we could get into today because a lot of stuff happened today. But if you guys remember, we talked about Dawn Hughes. This picture is not Dawn Hughes. Just give me a second on that. But Dawn Hughes, who is a trauma expert, wrapped her cross-examination. Diddy's lawyers tried to discredit her by pointing out that she gets paid by the DOJ to testify in federal cases, implying she's biased or has financial motive. But the real fireworks kind of came after that. Yesterday, George Kaplan, this guy right here, took the stand. Kaplan was Diddy's personal assistant from 2013 to 2015, 15 months in total. Before that, he worked at Nickelodeon. And yesterday, he took the stand. This is what was really interesting. He took the stand under a grant of immunity. Why? Because when he was first subpoenaed by the prosecution, he made it clear he intended to plead the fifth. He didn't want to incriminate himself in any of the goings-on that happened with this stuff. So he didn't want to do it. He made it clear that he was going to plead the fifth. So prosecutors ultimately chose to give him immunity, and now he's talking. And let me pause there real quick on my notes and just say this. This is kind of what we talk about with this stuff with immunity. When we talk about the RICO cases and we talk about, like, you guys are asking questions like, who else is going to fall with him? And I'm always like, no one. No one else is going to fall with him. They're not interested in that. This guy right here is a perfect example of low man on the totem pole. They are more interested in the information that he has, so they're happy to grant him immunity for anything that he's done. So he'll testify to take Diddy down. Diddy is the boss. Diddy is the one that they want. So this is a really good example of that, this particular person, George Kaplan. Now, what George Kaplan described gives us a new look into Diddy's world, one of micromanagement, fear, and bizarre hotel rituals. So Kaplan said that he was working between 80 to 100 hours a week. He made $125,000 a year. His direct supervisor was Christina Coram, who we've talked about a few times. That's Diddy's chief of staff. Kaplan told the court she essentially ran Mr. Combs' life. As for what Kaplan actually did, well, everything. He carried Diddy's bags, made sure his belongings were where he wanted them. He was in charge of organizing his homes. But the big one, he was responsible for prepping the hotel rooms in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami. And the way he describes it sounds more like a staging scene than it does just somebody checking into a hotel. He'd pack a hotel bag for Diddy. It had the essentials: clothes, a speaker, candles, liquor, baby oil, and Astroglide. Yeah, all of those items, you heard it. Those were the items that were staples. Those were the items that were always part of the prep. And once Diddy was done with the room, it was Kaplan's job, not the hotel staff, the Kaplan's job to clean up that hotel room. When asked what he would typically find afterward, he said lots of empty bottles, Gatorade bottles, liquor bottles, baby oil on the table, on the floor, around the bed. And it gets a little bit more hostile outside of that. So Kaplan also told the jury that Diddy would threaten his job and rage over minor issues. One of the first instances that happened in his very first week on the job, Diddy asked for a BPA-free gallon water bottle from Whole Foods. They didn't have it, and Kaplan didn't want to be late, so he grabbed 2 half-gallon bottles instead. They were BPA-free water, but it wasn't a single gallon. It was 2 half-gallon bottles. But apparently that was a mistake. Kaplan said Diddy got in his face. He was visibly angry and told Kaplan that if he didn't bring him what he asked for, he was very angry and told Kaplan he didn't bring him what he asked for. Kaplan testified that he was very close to my face. And this was just over water, guys. And remember, Kaplan did not want to testify. He only did this because he was granted immunity. So the real question is, what else does he really know? Because this is what he's willing to start saying publicly under oath with legal protection. What is he possibly holding back? Now, this was just the start of Kaplan's testimony. This was on Wednesday, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into Thursday, where Kaplan's going to reveal a little bit more from Diddy's inner circle, because, right now, every new witness that we've seen seems to confirm what prosecutors are trying to prove, and that this wasn't just a chaotic thing or diva behavior, that it was a pattern of power, control, intimidation, and excess, right? That's what we're going for with this. So now we are on Thursday morning, okay, today, May 22nd. So George Kaplan took the stand again, all right? He ended up wrapping his testimony today. He had a front row seat to everything that was going on. So let's just jump right and make sure I'm not missing anything here. All right. Now, once he started talking, he didn't stop. He called Combs a god among men. He said, this is what he said. I'm going to quote it. "I'm a young man, and this is a god among men talking to me. He pushed me to my depth and to depths I didn't even know I had." This was him describing the experiences as one of the most complicated chapters of his life. But it didn't take long for things to go a little bit darker. He then testified that during the time, his time with Diddy, he witnessed him throw green apples at one of his girlfriends, Gina. And this was while they were at the Florida home, the Miami home. He was very angry. She was trying to shield herself with her arms. And here's where it gets a little bit more twisted. Kaplan admitted that at the time, he tried to rationalize the violence, thinking that maybe it was just normal in this industry. He said, quote, "I thought it might be normal if I wanted to have a career in this industry." Let that sit for a second, okay? That he thought that violence in this industry might be normal, which it's not. I mean, it happens, but it's not. Let's go back to the hotel bag, because he talked about this. Every time he traveled, he would set up his hotel rooms in advance, laying out the clothes, the toiletries, the liquor, the candles, the baby oil, and Astroglide. And when Diddy left, it was his job to clean up the place. And the reason that it was his job to clean up the place, with all the stuff, the bottles and the Gatorade and the baby oil and the substances and the toys and all the other stuff that was there, Kaplan had to do this meticulously because he didn't trust hotel staff not to sell the story. His job was to protect Diddy's public image. So it wasn't the hotel staff that would go in and clean up these messes for Diddy after he was done. His assistants would go in first and clean up the hotel rooms to get rid of anything that could be incriminating that hotel staff could use to sell that story against him. That's kind of what was going on here. We also learned something interesting, and this isn't really necessarily relevant to what's going on with Diddy or to this case, but I found this very interesting. It's not a bad thing. It's actually kind of a good thing. But apparently on May 21st, which was yesterday, right, that is Biggie, Notorious Christopher Wallace, Notorious B.I.G. Biggie's birthday. And at Combs Enterprises, that's a paid holiday, apparently. Did not know that. We just learned that today. So I felt that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. I would throw that in with you guys. Now let's talk about why Kaplan left, okay? So Kaplan said that he stayed silent for a long time, but what ultimately broke him were two specific incidents, what he called the plane incident and the Apple incident. The plane incident happened in late 2015. Kaplan testified that he witnessed Diddy become physically violent with Cassie Ventura on his private jet. Even though there weren't visible injuries afterwards, Kaplan said, "In my heart of hearts, I told myself I knew what was happening, and I felt an element of guilt to not be stopping it." He said, "People can be injured all the time without injuries being visible." And that is so incredibly true. Then came the Apple incident with Gina. He said, "The tension and anger in the room was scary. I had never seen or been part of anything like that." And then he told Combs' longtime chief of staff, Christina Coram, that he didn't want to be around that kind of behavior anymore. "I was unwilling to stand by the behavior." And here's the kicker. Kaplan said he believes Coram stayed working for Combs up until very recently. So I found that very interesting as well. Then cross-examine happened, and that didn't really change the momentum. Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, tried to frame Kaplan's departure as a loss for Combs' business. He said, "Mr. Combs' temper, from what you saw, did not help his business." No, it did not. It hurt his business? Yes, it did. Among other things, it prompted a hardworking, dedicated person, meaning yourself, to leave the company? Correct. Kaplan told jurors that he desperately did not want to come here today. When asked if his reluctance was because he had nothing against Sean Combs, Kaplan responded, yes. And when asked if he didn't want to testify at all, he said 100%. Basically, he said that he doesn't have anything against Diddy and that he 100% did not want to testify. So what we have here is a former, very trusted employee, a man who idolizes Combs, who now years later describes a man whose rage, abuse, and control not only destroyed others, but ultimately pushed away the people who believed in him the most. Now, Kaplan's testimony is over from this point, but it did add even more weight to what prosecutors are building, which is a pattern of manipulation, violence, and unchecked power. So, now let's get into this. Because this might be one of the most critical testimonies we've heard in the Diddy trial yet. We're talking about Kid Cudi. Here's my picture here for you guys. Bam. So this wasn't just another celebrity coming in to testify. Prosecutors needed Kid Cudi's testimony. They needed it because they're not just alleging abuse, they're alleging racketeering, which means they need to show a broader criminal conspiracy. And Kid Cudi's testimony was all about establishing that pattern. One of the key allegations, that Diddy threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's car after finding out he was dating Cassie, and that shortly after, Cudi's Porsche was literally destroyed in a fire. And we're going to show you guys pictures of that in a moment. So again, if you are on TikTok, you can jump over to YouTube if you want to see the photos of what the Porsche looked like that were shown today in court. Prosecutors are saying that this wasn't just one-off, that it wasn't a one-off. It was part of violence, intimidation, and retaliation that defined the entire case. So let's go line by line on it, okay? So Kid Cudi, whose real name is Scott Mescudi, walked into the courtroom, no eye contact with Diddy, just walked down the center aisle and took the stand. When asked to describe himself, he said he's a musician and an actor. He identified Cassie Ventura in a photo and confirmed they had met in 2008 and dated around 2011. He said when they started dating, he said, quote, "I understood that she and Sean Combs had some problems and that they weren't dating anymore." Then came the 6 a.m. phone call in December of, it was either 11 or 12. There's a correction here. I think that ended up being 12, but I'll have to verify it in my notes in a minute. But in December of either 2011 or 2012, Cudi said he got a phone call from Cassie at around 6 a.m. She sounded really, saying, quote, "She sounded really stressed on the phone, nervous, scared. She told me Combs had found out we were dating. She asked me to pick her up." And he did pick her up, and they went to a nearby hotel. Now, while they were at the hotel, they got a phone call from Capricorn Clark, who we're going to talk about a little bit more here and later. She was a Combs employee. She said that Cudi said that she sounded scared, on the verge of tears. She said, quote, "She told me that Sean Combs and an associate were inside my house." That's what Cudi testified. She was forced to go along with them over there. She was sitting in a car outside Cudi's house waiting. That's where they had taken her. Then, let me change this picture real quick. Then Cudi calls Diddy. On the way back to his house, he calls Diddy directly. "I asked him if he was in my house." Diddy responded, "I just want to talk to you." Cudi told him, "I'm on my way. I'll be right down." Diddy responded, "I'm over here waiting for you." Now, when they got to the house, he said The outside of the house looked normal, but inside it was clear that somebody had been there. His security cameras had been moved. He testified that he had not moved them. Gifts that he had bought for his family were opened and left on the kitchen counter. I know it was a lot of Chanel. His dog was locked in the bathroom, and he testified that he had not done that before leaving. He called Combs again and asked where he was. Diddy told him he was on his way. At that point, Cudi said, I wanted to confront him. I wanted to fight him, but I didn't know who he had with him or what his intentions were. So instead, Cudi called the police. He filed a report about the break-in that day. Now, let's talk about post-break-in, because Cudi said shortly after that break-in, he ignored Diddy's text. He testified, I guess he was in the dark about things and wanted to talk, but at that point, post-break-in, I didn't want to talk. He said, you broke into my house. You messed with my dog. I don't want to talk to you. Now, let's get into the photos of the car. We have 4 of them I'm going to show you right now, and this is going to be one. This is the inside of the door. You can see the torch marks. In January of 2012, Cudi's dog washer called him early in the morning. His Porsche was on fire in the driveway. He was about 45 minutes away at the time, staying at an ex-girlfriend's sister's house. Okay, let me change the picture again. I'm going to show you all some more of this. We're going to talk about what these pictures are kind of showing in a minute. His friend sent him photos before he arrived. The jury saw these photos in court. He described the photo on the stand. The damage of the Molotov cocktail in my Porsche. It looks like the top of my Porsche was cut open, and that's where they put the Molotov cocktail in there. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Molotov cocktail is, it is like a bottle filled with some type of flammable substance, gasoline, alcohol, something like that, usually with a rag stuffed in it that soaks up some of what's in there. They light it on fire, throw it in. It's like a makeshift, explosive device kind of thing, but it can cause a lot of damage once it breaks, right? So somebody slit a hole in the soft top of the car and dropped this in there. And the car was ultimately completely destroyed by it. So you can see kind of where the seat looks there. He testified that law enforcement found the Molotov cocktail in the driver's seat, but when he got there, it was burnt up to the ground near the vehicle. He said it was just kind of burnt up. When asked what his reaction was, he was just basically like, what the F? Except he didn't say F. And there's a better picture of the slit, and you can see where obviously the top is melted and burned right there. So that's kind of what you're looking at with that in these pictures. So then, after all of that, Cudi testified that he saw Cassie at a private club a few days later in LA, and that was the last time he saw her. He also decided to meet with Diddy. He said he reached out after the fire, was like, this is getting out of hand. I just need to talk to him. When he walked into the room for the meeting, Diddy was alone, staring out the window, hand behind his back. This is what he said. This is legit what he said. He said, quote, Sean Combs was standing there staring out the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. And I can picture this in my head with him doing this. All right. They sat down and talked about the entire situation, Cudi and Cassie's relationship, how it started, how it ended. Cassie later arrived at the meeting. She told Diddy, we fell in love. Things just happened. Cudi was upset. Cudi said he was upset that Cassie had gone back to Diddy. When Cudi asked Diddy about the car, Diddy said, I don't know what you're talking about. Cudi withdrew his hand from a handshake. Diddy said, wait, I thought we were cool. Cudi confirmed that he asked Diddy directly, is your word that you had nothing to do with it? Diddy said, yes. Then Cudi testified the next time he saw Diddy was a few years later at the Soho house, and this was in 2015, and Diddy was there with his daughter. He pulled Cudi aside and said, man, I just want to apologize for everything and all that bullshit. Cudi said that was a piece after that. Now, from there, Cudi went into cross-examination. Brian Steele, one of Diddy's defense attorneys, is the one who went in and did cross. He asked if Cudi knew the DNA taken from the car belonged to a woman. Cudi said he didn't hear anything more from police about that. They asked about his breakup with Cassie. He said that they just stopped talking after about a year of dating. Steele asked, she played you, right? And Cudi goes, yes. He also clarified that Cassie told him about her issues with Diddy back in Thanksgiving of 2010. And that Diddy had asked him to do a song with Cassie around that time. Brian Steele then said, the person who played you and the person who played played Sean was Miss Ventura. True? And Cudi said, true. Then came Emily Johnson with the redirect. She asked what Cassie told Cudi about Diddy's abuse, and Cudi said that he would hit her, sometimes kick her. She asked how Cassie was feeling the morning of that December 2011 call. Cudi said she was really shook, worried that Combs finally knew about us and that he had my address because she gave Diddy his address, and that he was probably going to go to my house. He testified that he ended his relationship with Cassie because the drama was too much and because he was concerned for her safety and his own. He said, quote, because I knew Sean Combs was violent. So he ended the relationship, didn't want anything else to do with her because he knew Sean Combs was violent. And it was dramatic. Emily then also asked about the 2012 meeting where Cudi asked about the Porsche. And she said, what did you think when Combs said he didn't know about the fire? And Cudi said that he was lying. Now, that was the end of the testimony. That was it. Cudi then steps off the stand. So this is direct insight into how Diddy allegedly used intimidation, threats, and violence to control people. And this is why his testimony was so important, so pivotal to the prosecution's case, because they are now using this to stitch together a much bigger story, that criminal enterprise, a racketeering conspiracy. And this was a major, major piece of this. Now, this next part might not get headlines like somebody like Kid Cudi would, but it is just as important because today we heard from Mylah Morales. Okay. She is a former makeup artist for both Diddy and Cassie. Now, remember, Cassie used to have to hide a lot of injuries with makeup. She said that she worked with Diddy at the height of his power. She worked with Cassie during the most critical years of her career. And today she came to court and told the jury about a violent night in 2010 that ended with Cassie busted up and hiding at her house. So let's walk through it, every moment of Mylah Morales' testimony and what she said. So she said that she worked for Sean Combs between 2000 and 2005 as a makeup artist. She stopped working for him to move on to other celebrity clients, including Rihanna, who she worked with for 13 years. She first met Cassie during a photo shoot in Brooklyn when Cassie was just 16 years old. She didn't start doing Cassie's makeup regularly until 2007 when Cassie signed with Bad Boy Records. Morales said, we were close. She was like a little sister to me. She also confirmed that the last she did Ventura's makeup was in 2021. She added that Diddy was very hands-on about how Cassie looked. Sean always made sure the look was perfect, so we had to report back to him with photos. Then, I'll give you guys a picture of it. I know you guys, some of y'all like the sketches, so I'm going to give you that real quick. So then, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey walked her through the night Morales said she saw Cassie injured. It was a Grammy weekend in 2010 after a party at Prince's house, which real quick, I want to pause real quick on the Prince's house thing. A lot of people asked me the other night about this Prince audio, okay? And I haven't made a video about this, and I'll address it now. There is no Prince audio. There is no audio where Prince said that this comes up, if I show up hurt or dead, that, releases to the police. That is fake. It is false. It is AI. It is not real. It was never part of the trial. Whoever is putting that out there is lying, just so you guys know. There is no secret Prince audio. Just so y'all are aware, okay? But this was an after party at Prince's house. Morales and Cassie went back to a hotel room. Morales said Diddy showed up later, storming in and shouting, where the F is she? Except he didn't say F. He went to the bedroom where Cassie was staying and closed the door. She said that she testified that she heard yelling and screaming. I was just as frantic and I didn't know what to do. Then she said Diddy stormed out of the room. When Morales went in to check on Cassie, she said that Cassie was distraught. Morales described Cassie's injuries in detail, saying she had a swollen eye, a busted lip, and knots on her head. She said she took Cassie to her home, and Cassie stayed there for a few days to recover. And just to remind you, Cassie testified last week that this exact incident happened after a party at Prince's house, where Diddy beat her up and threw luggage at her. Morales backed it up pretty much word for word. Now, why was there no police report? Because prosecution asked, why didn't you call the police? And she said that she had a friend who was a doctor come to her house to check Cassie out. The doctor examined Cassie's face, stomach, and ribs and recommended that she go to the ER, but Cassie refused. She said they never called the police because she was afraid of Sean Combs. She said it very clearly. I feared for my life. After that, she and Cassie never spoke again about it. Now, then cross-examination comes on, right? And Anna Stavo is the one who took over for cross. She started by showing the jury photos of Cassie from a music video short, specifically the video for Wiz Khalifa's Black and Yellow. Morales had done Cassie's makeup for that shoot. The defense had previously argued that these photos were relevant because they contradicted Cassie's testimony that Diddy alleged that the Diddy alleged freak-offs and abuse interfered with her career. Estavo told the judge that she wanted to show the jury that Cassie was still actively working, still maintaining her image, still attending industry shoots and music videos, even during the time she claimed Diddy was controlling her. Morales confirmed that she did do the makeup for that shoot. Then there was a follow-up by Cross on the 2010 hotel incident. She got Morales to admit that she did not see what actually happened inside the bedroom after Combs went in. She only heard yelling and saw the aftermath. Morales also confirmed that she and Cassie spoke to a lawyer friend shortly after the incident. Estavo asked, "You were concerned, right?" And she said, "Yes, very concerned, of course." She also confirmed that her friendship with Cassie continued. She also confirmed that her friendship with Cassie continued even after Cassie and Diddy had broken up. Now, Estavo then moved on, and this backfired, guys, but moved on to a potential motive, which is Morales' media appearances. She asked Morales how many interviews she had done about Cassie and Diddy's relationship in that 2010 incident. And she said about 8. She also added that she had not been paid for any of those interviews. And that was it. With that, Morales stepped down from the stand. Now, let's be really clear here. While Mylah Morales' testimony wasn't flashy, it wasn't explosive in the way that Kid Cudi's was, it was critical because she was able to give the jury a first-hand account of Cassie's injuries, including that busted lip, a swollen eye, and knots on her head. And even if she didn't see it, she knows that Cassie didn't have them before she went in that room, and she knew that she came out with them in that room, right? She also backed up Cassie's timeline. She confirmed the hotel room, the party at Prince's house, Diddy storming and yelling, and just like Cassie, she said they never called police because they were terrified of what Diddy might do. Prosecutors needed a witness who had no personal stake, someone who saw what happened but wasn't romantically involved, wasn't in the inner circle anymore, and didn't owe anyone anything. And that is who Mylah Morales was. Now, she's another person with nothing to gain who came to court, took the oath, and said, "This is what happened. I saw it. I remember." And now that testimony is part of the official record. So now let's get into this next part because it's subtle, but it's damning. And you'll see why in a second. Because it didn't come from an accuser. It didn't come from another celebrity. It came from the general manager of a 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills. Now, in this photo right here, this is Frederick Seymour. He is the general manager of the El Hermitage Hotel. He took the stand and his testimony was short. And the defense didn't even try to cross-examine him. But what the jury saw, it said plenty. Now, they were shown internal hotel notes linked to Sean Diddy Combs' guest profile. And these weren't like random scribbles. These were instructions staff were expected to follow every time he stayed at the property. And I'm going to show you a picture of this hotel. It's a beautiful hotel. Look at that view. It's incredible. So these are the exact, I'm going to read them line for line, the exact notes on Diddy's profile at the El Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills. Please monitor outside his room, down the hall, and spray air freshener. Okay. The smell of what is, let's explain why that is. Let's let that sink in. Okay. Because the smell from his room was so overwhelming, they had to assign staff to monitor the hallway just to spray air freshener when he was there. All right. Other notes include always in caps, the word always in caps, always spills candle wax on everything and uses excessive amounts of oil, place the room out of order upon departure for deep cleaning. That's not like an occasional mess. That is routine destruction. And the hotel had to take his room out of service every time he left so that it could be deep cleaned. It also said, please authorize an extra $1,000 when guest stays with us to cover any room damages. Not a deposit. It's a precaution. That's an automatic pre-approved damage fee because they already knew something was getting wrecked, damaged, destroyed, whatever. Why does this matter? Because this isn't about illegal activity. These aren't criminal charges. These aren't criminal things that he did. But prosecutors introduced these notes for a reason, and it's because they line up with what multiple witnesses have already described. Hotel rooms prepped with candles, baby oil, Astroglide. Rooms left behind in complete disarray. Cleanup crews assigned to dispose of items like liquor bottles, lubricants, and Gatorade containers. And now we know that even luxury hotels were budgeting for destruction every time this man checked in. And this goes on to support the idea of what happened in these hotel rooms wasn't just a little bit of private excess. It was a pattern. And it happened so often that the hotels built it into their standard operating procedures. Okay? Now, I want to repeat this because I said this earlier on. The defense didn't even bother cross-examining Frederick Seymour. And why would they? There's nothing to argue. It's their client's profile in their system. It's his behavior on record. It tells us everything we need to know about what went down behind closed doors because the staff had been dealing with it for years. It's another crack in the armor, another detail that supports the bigger picture, and another reason this trial isn't just about what Diddy did, it's about how long he was doing it. Now, after Frederick Seymour stepped down, they called their 16th witness to the stand. This witness wasn't a celebrity. This wasn't another accuser. This man, I'm going to show you guys a picture. I know you guys like the sketch, was Joshua Croft. He's a computer forensic agent with HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. Croft's job is very simple: collect, preserve, and analyze digital evidence. And today he walked the jury through what was recovered from Cassie Ventura's laptops during a federal investigation that led to the March 2024 raids on Diddy's homes in LA and Miami, and ultimately his September arrest in New York. So let's get into what Croft found, okay? Starting with the laptops. He had testified that he examined 3 laptops connected to Cassie Ventura. He was able to extract data from them, but the condition of each device varied. One of the laptops had been wiped. Croft said that it had been restored to factory default setting. That means all user data was erased and the device was set back to its original configuration, just like it came out of the box. The second laptop was still active. When powered on, it went to a login screen that had 2 profiles, one for a guest user and one labeled Frank Black. If you guys remember, Frank Black is one of Diddy's aliases. Now, if that name sounds, and that's why that name probably should sound familiar. And if you remember too, George Kaplan, who's Diddy's former assistant, testified yesterday that the hotel rooms were often booked under the alias Frank Black. Cassie confirmed that too. Which, for the record, he also would do it under another nickname, which actually was a reference to Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie, whose moniker was Frank White. So here we have a direct link between a digital profile on Cassie's laptop and one of the known aliases Diddy allegedly used to secure hotel rooms and conduct private meetings. The third laptop was physically damaged. He said this one had visible dents and bends and wouldn't power on. The device was essentially dead. He wasn't able to extract anything from it. So then we get into Cross. Okay, so Tenny Garagos handled Cross for defense. Garagos asked about the search authorization. Croft confirmed that Cassie Ventura gave consent for investigators to access her laptops. Garagos then emphasized that Croft did not do a full review of the data. His role was strictly extraction and preservation, meaning he collected the data but did not personally analyze the full contents. There were no bombshells from the defense here, just an effort to clarify that Croft didn't dig through every file himself or review all the content firsthand. But still, it matters. And you might be asking yourself, okay, why? What's the point? Why bring in a computer forensic agent to talk about a wiped laptop and a login screen? Well, because this is foundational testimony. This is prosecutors laying the groundwork for what's coming next. One laptop was wiped clean. This supports the idea of erasing evidence. Another laptop had an account labeled Frank Black, an alias directly tied to Diddy, as has been established by Kaplan and Cassie and several other people. And a third laptop that was so damaged it couldn't even be turned on, possibly pointing to intentional destruction of evidence. The government is building their RICO case brick by brick by brick, and this testimony helps establish that Diddy operated under false names to use digital devices to coordinate private activity and possibly cover his tracks. So let's talk about what's happening next, okay? Because that was it for the day. Jury was dismissed, so that's the end of today. But prosecutor Maureen Comey told the court that the next witness will be called after the holiday weekend. And this witness, I'm excited to share this one with you because this is a name that's been brought up a few times, and I think that her testimony is going to be pretty incredible, okay? But there is no court tomorrow. They are off for the holiday. So this will be the last update for this week. And by the time we have another update on Tuesday, I should be back home in my usual setting and we can kind of get a little bit more back to the hopefully 2 updates a day, basically. But let me show you who's up next. Again, if you are on TikTok, you won't see the picture, but not a big deal. This is who's up next. And you're like, who is that? That, my friends, is Capricorn Clark. She is a former Combs employee, one who's been mentioned by Kid Cudi, one who's been mentioned by Cassie. And she is the one who was visibly shaken when she told him that Diddy had shown up at his house unannounced and brought there against her will. Now, after Capricorn, the prosecution plans to call witnesses from the LAPD and the Los Angeles Fire Department, which likely ties back to the arson case involving Kid Cudi's Porsche and the Molotov cocktail, which was found inside. Maureen Comey told the court, "We are on schedule," which means they are steadily moving towards closing their case. There's about 6 weeks left at this point in time. So today's testimony wasn't dramatic, but it was critical. Well, Kid Cudi's was a bit dramatic, but all of it was critical. The jury saw how prosecutors are connecting digital evidence to alias usage. They were building infrastructure of a conspiracy. The aliases, the secret profiles, possibly destroyed data. You're seeing the intimidation tactics. You're seeing the violence tactics, the things that he's doing inside of and outside of just romantic relationships. So this is the stuff that RICO cases are made of. Every login, every hotel booking, every wipe device, every one of them tells a story. And Joshua Croft today was translating that portion of it. On top of that, again, we had so many people, employees, former people in there that really start building this pattern that shows how he ruled with an iron fist and how he was. So that is what we're looking at right here with this. Now, that's all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, if you came in on Instagram or TikTok late, know that this is on YouTube under the Diddy playlist. Under the Diddy playlist. You can go watch any of this and see it. You can watch the midday recap from yesterday and get caught up on everything because we do these daily. So you can get caught up. And as always, if you don't follow yet, I'm looking at you, TikTok. Thank you guys, by the way, for the almost 46,000 likes. Make sure to hit that follow button if you don't already, because you don't want to miss any of this. Same thing with Insta and same thing with YouTube. Again, it's something free that you guys can do that helps support my content. Costs you absolutely nothing but a quick half a second click. That being said, we'll probably have some more little tidbits I'll pull out. We'll do some shorts tomorrow and things like that, reels, TikTok videos. But other than that, somebody said, "Do I not do it on weekends?" There's nothing to do on weekends. Court's adjourned. Court's adjourned today for the rest of the week, and then we'll get back to it on Tuesday after the holiday. People ask, "Will Diddy take the stand?" I would be surprised if he didn't. I would be surprised if he didn't. That's a good question. All right, guys. Have a great evening, and we will see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.